Curious about how a single image can evoke emotion? Today, we're unpacking the craft of photography and how photographers capture the world through their lens. Welcome to Inside Plug, the podcast where independent creators and entrepreneurs connect and inspire. I'm Devon Jones, a military veteran turned filmmaker. I found my spark in the military, and now I'm here to help you find yours. Inside Plug is a platform for your voice, stories to be shared, and ideas to flourish. Let's dive in and plug into creativity and entrepreneurship together. Today on our show, we have traveling photographer from Rochester, New York, Dustin Medler. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to dive into it, man.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So I stumbled across your profile, and your pictures is just amazing. So if you can bring us back to the beginning, all right? Bring us back to how old you were and when you first stumbled across your first camera.
So I'm 34 right now, and I've kind of on and off grew up around cameras, but really the time frame that really like started it for me was like in MySpace days. I'm kind of dating myself as a millennial here, but back in the MySpace days, it was like you couldn't really like post just to your profile. Essentially, you had to like have like a photo gallery, and somebody would bust out their tiny little pocket digital camera, and I was always the guy, like whenever we hung out, I would like steal the camera and I'd just kind of run the show for the entire night. And it was really fun, but it all kind of started when I was skateboarding. I'd watched my buddy had made a rollerblading video, and I just was obsessed with the idea of being able to document the whole process of start to finish of like a video. And that I just started paying attention to camera angles more than anything else. Like I've always loved skateboarding, and the eye that you get once you start to think from a photographer's perspective, it just kind of changes how you look at the world entirely. So once I'd seen somebody like capture memories, those things can live on forever. That's when I was like, oh. And then I turned 27 and I was working at a bar, and this old guy just kind of walked in one night, and I'd been always wanting a camera. I had like a film camera. I've had like a couple little tiny little things. Phones were kind of gradually. I always upgraded my phone for a better camera. It's the same thing as today. But back then it was like you had like a 2 megapixel sensor. So, they were just like crappier to slightly better to slightly better. But yeah, I'd been traveling. I did some hitchhiking, and the fact that I don't have any photos or any memories from when I was hitchhiking from New York out to California and back. There's one photo that some guy from Ireland have of us in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but that whole trip, there's nothing documented. And once I realized I was going to continue traveling throughout my life, I was like, I got to find a way to document this. And, nobody else is bringing cameras. It's just me a lot of the time. And I taught myself photography essentially through doing self-portraits so I could have big landscape photos with me in them. At the time it was like 2016, and the whole thing was like big landscapes with like a tiny person way off in the distance looking like a little ant. And I was like, oh, how do people do this? Like, I was like, they must be, setting up a trigger, running down a mountain, taking the photo. And it never crossed my mind that like people travel with other people. So like by nature, I taught myself that, and that kind of brought me into photography and understanding my camera, because you don't want to like take so much time taking a photo, because it's like when you got the camera in your hand, it's one thing to take a bunch of photos, but when you're like setting up the camera, testing your settings, and then running far away, you want to like have that stuff dialed in before you're like running back and forth trying to take the photos again. But it was 2016. Some guy came into a bar and kind of talked me into getting my first Canon Rebel. And from there, I got that shipped right to the bar that I was working at. I picked that box up once the camera was in my hand, and I'd like watched like 2 Peter McKinnon videos at the time. I just like saw it as a way out. It's like, I might not have to like work a regular job if I figure this thing out. And as soon as I started rolling with that, I pretty much dropped everything. I took $600 and moved 500 miles north to Washington. I was like, let's see if I can do it. And, it's taken 6 or 7 years, but we're kind of rolling now a little bit. We got some momentum finally. It takes time for everybody. Some people get it done in 2 years. Some people take 20, mine's taken about 8.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. All right, so you got the Canon Rebel, and you say you started with self portraits. So are you still shooting with the Canon, and are you still shooting self portraits?
Yeah, self-portraits are like a passion of mine. It's kind of a way for me to document eras of my life. And as you make like YouTube videos and stuff like that, you start to learn your framing and everything. So the self-portraits kind of help the video work. And, it's part of how I process eras of my life. And so I can look back and really see like what I was going through at the time. And you can like, as I go through my catalog, I'm like, oh, I was going through it at that point. And then, other times you're like, man, I was crushing. I was having a good time and everything. And no, but I've gone through, I don't know, like 6 different cameras at this point. I started with the T6. And my friend, this guy that I knew for like 4 months, he was just incredible. He was like the first professional photographer I'd ever met. And he really like nudged me along before I even got the camera. I was just curious, man. I was like, how do you take these photos like this? How is the background blurry? How are you getting these like little stars in your photos? Like what is the magic that you're doing when you're holding that thing? So he'd like kind of trickled some information in the back of my head. And he told me this was the one thing that really stuck with me. He's like, once your hands move faster than your camera can process the settings that you need to set up, that's when you start upgrading. And so I started taking, my self-portraits, and then I was always taking pictures of like stuff on my desk and just literal garbage just to understand my camera. I like to, it's like just crappy photos of cats and, cups of coffee on my desk and stuff. But I've gone through, once I moved faster, I moved up to this Canon 6D. That kind of changed everything right then. I was able to take, that full frame photo. You don't really notice it at first, but once you pick up a full frame camera, you're like, oh man, there's just like a lot more space, a lot more detail. This looks professional, right? Like that there's a very distinct difference between for me, like an APS-C sensor, which the T6 is, and the 6D. But I followed the Canon world. That was just like where I started. I'd followed Peter McKinnon like a lot of people did in that time frame, and I just stayed on the Canon wagon. And then last year I lost about $20,000 worth of equipment. And so a lot of people don't switch from their brand because you get so invested in your lenses and your, everything that's involved with that brand that you never really switch, because overhauls just is so time consuming. But thankfully and unfortunately, all my gear just disappeared one day, out of some mistakes of my own, leaving a bag where it shouldn't have been left. And so I switched over to Sony for a little while. Very old camera, A7S II. I ran my business on that, like kind of in a pinch, just because it was cheap. And I just remembered somebody had said something about that camera, like probably like 6 years ago. So I found one for a couple $100, and then decided to sell that. And Lumix has kind of been coming out with some crazy affordable hybrid shooting cameras, because I've pretty much become a hybrid shooter. So now I'm running on the Lumix S5 2X, and I got 3 lenses. I keep a pretty minimal bag. I went through and turned into a gearhead, and the longer I've shot, the less stuff I want to have. I want to just be able to throw stuff into a bag and be ready for it. So I've got a 20-60, a 50, and an 85, and that's kind of just what I run everything with.
Nice. That was actually my next question. I was gonna say, so what's usually in your camera bag?
Yeah,
3 lenses.
Yeah, so the 3 lenses. So I run with the Lumix S5 2X. Yeah, like the 20-60, and I want to switch out some of that equipment, but it's worked very well for me for the last like 8 months or so. 50 millimeter 1.8, 85 1.8. There's not a lot of third party stuff for the Lumix, or maybe I just haven't dug deep enough. I've been happy with what I have. I'm running with for flash, I'm using a Godox V1, and I use a flash trigger too. So I use the X Pro O for that one, also by Godox. And then typically I have it's kind of a knockoff wireless microphone system. I had the DJI at one point, but I just found something for like $100 and it works just as good, 90% as good. I can't tell the difference. And I have a little Neewer, pretty much pocket-sized dolly that I'll use, which is super awesome when you're filming yourself, just to have a little bit of natural motion while you're filming. And then lately, I got sent some little handheld smoke machines. So lately, I've been bringing around, I think it's called the Smoke Ninja. And 2 companies give me these smoke machines. So I got a Smoke Ninja, and I haven't really dived much into it, but I just toss that in the bag. And then I bring in one small video light, the Aperture MC light, because that's got a bunch of settings on it, full RGB. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. If I'm doing video work, I just bring one Godox SL60W video light. Again, it's like $150 light. Like, you don't need anything super fancy if you're just creating content and stuff. You just need some quality in it. But that's pretty much the whole thing. I'm on a base kit MacBook M1, which I desperately need to upgrade, but it's been working. I've been pushing it to its limits, but it's just like the camera, it's like I move faster than it now. It's about time to upgrade that.
Nice. All right. So with the different types of photographs, what would you say is your most proudest photograph?
Man, there's a couple. So I took like a year. I took a year off from life and chased landscapes in the astrophotography. That's really like where I got my passion from was landscape photography. And I just went alone with me and my dog. And there was a astrophoto actually just outside of my grandmother's house that when I took that, and that was on the second camera, the Canon 6D. I took that and I was like, oh shit, I might have something here. It kind of set in stone where like I was starting to learn composition and really starting to be able to tighten in my camera settings. And the composition's such a big part of that, and understanding, how to build a photo that draws eyes to where you want them to go. And my goal always with a photo is to put you in my shoes. I want you to feel like you can live with that stuff. It's tangible. And with landscape photography, I want to create an escape for people. And because it's such a peaceful thing to me. But it would be that, and then I took some photos in Washington that were, of my dog. I love moody weather, fog, rain, like give me all that. I'm Irish, I'm pasty, like I don't want to see the sunshine too many days of the year. I want it to be nice and overcast and foggy, and that's just like my favorite aesthetic. And the Pacific Northwest has so many waterfalls. I took a photo of Abiqua waterfalls, and when I got that photo, that was like another reassurance where I was like, shit, like this is something that I really think I'm gonna end up doing with my life. And it's a handful of product photos and stuff like that. That's a totally different type of photography, but everything for me comes down to landscapes. Like that's where the passion lies for me.
Nice. All right. Could you plug everyone to your profiles? Where can they find some of your photography, and where can they follow you at?
Yeah, so I've been rebuilding my website. I'm trying to incorporate more of the video stuff, but my Instagram is dusty.roams, ROAMS, and I pretty much have that just dedicated as my product photography and photography education page. And the same name for YouTube. I'm starting to do a little more on YouTube. Currently, I'm rebuilding a van, so that's if you tap in there, you're going to see a lot of van build and me hitting my head on the bottom of my transmission and stuff. But the goal with the YouTube channel and with what I'm doing on Instagram is I really want to teach people photography, because there was shortcuts that I wish I had known when I had started that could have put me in a better place quicker, instead of sitting on YouTube for, years at a time trying to figure out a couple little things. So I'm all about cheat codes. And so my approach to teaching is I just want to teach shortcuts and then get the fundamentals out of the way. And then the goal is for you to go take 10,000 shitty photos. And then that's how you become a good photographer. You just got to take a bunch of bad photos, and you just got to accept that that's the process, and I just want to be able to help people on that. So that's the purpose of my social media, as well as my client work that I put on there. And that's going to change. That's going to change a little bit over the next 6 months or so, as I'm kind of moving out of a studio space and into doing that style of photography out on the road.
Nice. I love that you said that you're looking to, like, teach people photography and share the things that you learn. Is there anything that you like to share with our audience, like any insights that you can give, like camera settings, how to set up, how to prepare for a shot?
Yeah, number one above everything is your lighting. You could go on and put your camera in auto mode for the rest of your life, but if your lighting is right and your composition is right, that's what's going to make your photography better. When you get down to like the nitty gritty and you really are looking for a certain look, that's when you start moving into settings. So I would start, the thing is like lighting first, learn your lighting above all else. Learn that how to use your lighting to your advantage. Set that thing. A lot of people are like, jump into manual mode. I really think it's important to play in manual mode or automatic mode. And then the next one would be aperture priority. If you start playing with those ones and just start looking, like after you take the photo, look at what the camera decided for the settings. And when you see a photo you like write that down and describe what that photo looked like so that you can reference it when you want to use that style again. And then those are like the primary things that I think are super important for people to understand. And then after that, it's composition. Study composition. Constantly be looking at photos. You have to look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great photos to start to understand what you do to build that photo. How do you create a good photo? Because it's one thing to take photos, but when you're taking the time to build a composition and tailor the frame to what you want to tell within that photo, that's what starts to separate your work from other people, is that attention to detail. And I really only think like the difference between a decent photographer and a really good photographer, it's only like 10% more effort. It's not like you're needing to do a whole lot. If you want to be like a fucking incredible photographer, you got to jump into that 25 and you got to do a lot to get there. But again, that's time and learning to just keep playing, because people put so much stress on, got to get a banger photo. Everything's got to be a banger. Like it's got to be so good. And it doesn't, it doesn't. It has to be better than what you've previously done. And I've gotten into phases of my life where my work has gotten worse and I've had to like relearn and take a different direction on how I'm going to make photos. So you got to realize that it's a curve, man. It's the whole thing's a curve. So composition, lighting, and then don't be afraid to sit in automatic or manual, but always look at your settings after those photos are taken, and you'll start getting better as you understand those settings. And then of course, like jump into manual after that, but that's not like a super important thing up front. That's my opinion. Some people will be like, nah, don't do that, man. Like go right into manual. You got to be a master quick. I'm like, nah, take your time. Enjoy yourselves.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. All right. Let's see here. So what motivates you to get up and get out and go get it?
It's not every day. I've dealt with like depression, and I've got all kinds of mental stuff that I go through, and that's why I went into landscape photography. But the things that typically get me up are it's usually just wanting to see how far I can take it. I'm here, and I feel like a lot of people don't realize they're here. And the purpose of being here is see how far you can go. Like take your interests and see where they can take you. So if you're passionate about it, you'd be shocked if you just lean into your passion. I take risks. I take so many risks. My family's so concerned for me sometimes, because if I got an idea, that's what wakes me up. I can't go too long not acting on an idea. And I think that's where a lot of depression and stress and anxieties come from, is you have these ideas, but you're afraid to take the first step. And so I do my best to shorten the gap between waking up and executing on the ideas that maybe I'd set up the day before. And it's about realizing it's a long process. You just want to be better than yesterday. And sometimes you take a few steps back and you got to take care of yourself. But the whole thing is like staying curious and wanting to just keep pushing things forward. That's kind of what keeps me going. And I like to keep other people on their toes, so nobody really knows what I'm doing all the time.
Nice. Has there been any obstacles that you had to overcome when it comes down to getting a shot? Maybe weather, lack of equipment, or just trying to find that right shot, but you still found a way to make it work?
Yeah, a lot of it's like lighting. I've fallen into, and I still run into this. I shot a wedding recently, and I pulled up the photos and files on my computer, and I looked at them, and I'm like, Jesus, the trick with a bad photo, the composition might be there, but like the quality of the photo might be bad. Just throw that thing into black and white, make it nostalgic, So the biggest thing for me is like when I mess up my lighting, and sometimes you got to wake up really early. Like I was shooting the Grand Tetons in 2019, it was New Year's Eve, and it's sunset over there, but like Wyoming's high elevation. It's ice cold. It's like -15 outside with a wind chill. So like just having your fingers exposed to that air to get like that nice cap of sunlight on top of the Tetons, it was painful, and you have to like trudge through the snow. And I love the clean look of winter. It's very pristine. It's calm, it's quiet, everything's muffled, but that just being able to get to location, trudging through it, you're carrying like sometimes 30 pounds of gear because you don't really know what you're going to walk into. That's why I started minimizing stuff, was like going on these hiking trips and killing myself over miles and miles. And I have a torn meniscus, and like, so that's just like twice as much weight on me. But yeah, the winter stuff's always been super gnarly. Respect to people that just send it in the winter and chase like huge peaks and stuff like that. But those are probably the biggest one. Weddings still get me a little bit. There's so much pressure on them. And I want to be a great wedding photographer. I feel like I'm okay, but that's not like my home base. So respect to all the wedding photographers. You got to be a different type of animal to want to go do that.
All right. So last question. I usually ask this to all my guests. So being that you're a photographer, may have to take a different route. So usually I will ask, do you have a book, TV show, or movie that you recommend? But being that you're a photographer, any book or even a photographer that you would recommend any aspiring photographer take a look into?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like the photography thing, I haven't read much books on it, college, YouTube for everything. But when it comes to books, I actually quit a job like almost on the spot because of this book. It was the 4-Hour Work Week. That one kind of changed the trajectory of my life a little bit, as I was starting to realize that I want to work for myself, and I don't want to work so hard forever. 4-Hour Work Week was big for me. That one was really important for me to read. And a photographer, that's a big one. Let me think here. There's just too many, man. When it comes to like product photography, this person that I started following when I had like the smallest account, and I was like my first year. I don't know how we found each other, but it's Reham _ food stylist, food photographer. You might have to do a little bit of research on that. REHAM _ food stylist. Her work as a food photographer is so good. It's one of those profiles where you look at it and you're like, why don't you have hundreds of thousands of followers? Like, your work is incredible, absolutely incredible. But that's the great thing about photography, is it's so left field. And then I've been in such my own lane. I haven't really been paying attention. I hate to say it, but I haven't been paying attention to photography that much. But yeah, I would say check her out. And yeah, I'm gonna stick with that one. there's a guy that I'm trying to think of his name. He's this incredible photographer out of Oregon, but I will take forever to find that one.
All right. Yeah. Whenever you find it, just shoot me a message and I'll try to attach it to the interview here. So whenever.
Oh yeah. That'd
get that link for you guys. All right. So anything, any last words you want to share with the aspiring photographers? They just got their camera and they're ready to get out there.
Man, as soon as you want to quit, that's when you lean in. If you're getting discouraged, you got to double down. You know, you're never gonna figure it out if you get frustrated and keep telling yourself that, you know, I don't take good photos. Like, you may not take good photos yet. Like 8 years in, I can't say that there's not a month where I'm not like, dude, I want to sell this thing. You know, like, but you just got to keep going. You just got to keep going. You figure it out, and you're never going to be the best. You know, that's the thing, is you're never going to be the best. The best doesn't exist within photography. There's just you. There's your photography. That's all that matters. You taking photos. Who cares what everyone else is doing?
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dustin. All right. Thanks for tuning in to Insight Plug. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it inspiring. Remember, every journey begins with a single step, and every creator has a story worth sharing. If you love what you heard, don't forget to rate and leave a review on www.insightplug.com. That's www.insightplug2gs.com. Your feedback helps us bring you more content. Until next time, keep creating. Devon Jones signing off. Stay inspired.